Welcome to Loving God and Loving Life. In 2 Corinthians chapter 9, we find the theme being God loving and rewarding a cheerful giver. Now, I've been in ministry over 30 years, been serving Christ longer than that, and I have watched the pendulum swing. And 30 years ago, one of the most popular messages was God is going to reward you. If you give, God's going to give back to you and he's going to bless you. And yeah, a lot of it was financially, he was going to bless you, but in other ways, if you give, God's going to give back to you. Well, that pendulum, there came a time of correction. And I feel like even today, maybe we're on the backside of it, but there was a season of correction against that message. And I heard a lot of sermons like this that, made it just sound like if you don't ever expect a reward, don't ever give expecting God to give something back to you. You probably heard that. Almost make you feel guilty. You should never expect God to reward you. Well, unfortunately, Paul never heard that sermon because in this chapter, he absolutely says it. He just comes right out and makes very clear. He says, remember this, a farmer who plants only a few seeds will get a small crop, but the one who plants generously will get a generous crop. Now he goes on and tells us to give generously and not reluctantly and cheerfully, and God will generously provide all that you need. Getting very clearly, he is. Let's make no mistake about it. He's raising a financial offering, and he's absolutely saying that God is going to reward them, and he's talking about finances as well. You know, the truth is, none of us can continue to give generously if God doesn't continue to multiply us. So no, if your heart is right and you legitimately want to continue to be a blessing to God's kingdom and to God's people, quite honestly, you can't do that. If this is my last dollar, well, I can't afford to be generous unless there's a lot more where this came from. And that's the truth. And that's exactly what Paul's saying. Paul's saying, man, there's a lot more. God's got a lot more where that came from. And it's as we live with a generous heart that it becomes a flow. You become that garden hose. The garden hose lives to water that garden. That's our goal. We're going to bless those people. But that garden hose stays full the whole time. That garden hose can't continue to be a blessing unless it stays full the whole time. Gang, I'm expecting to stay full. Yes, I'm expecting God to bless me physically, financially, emotionally, spiritually. He is a rewarder. He says that of himself. I didn't make him that way. That's just who he is. I just want to live with a generous, generous heart. God, give us your generosity. May we live that way. Live generously in Jesus' name. God, send us one person today to share your love with, to share that generosity with. Gang, that's the life. Serving God, loving God. That's the only life that we end up loving.